Hi there. So I'm making this video to show you visually how to create this robot that we're going to be building in class. You also will have instructions, which are a PDF available online, but sometimes it's hard to see from just the one picture exactly what's going on. So this is a big sturdy robot, and we can mount all of the sensors that we have on it, and it'll be lots of fun for us to play with. So I first wanted to say a couple of things about working with Legos. Some of you are way more experienced Lego builders than I am, because I know some of you have done like Lego League in high school and so forth. And some of you may never have worked with Legos before. And what I want to emphasize is the importance of paying attention to the details. And for instance, in the set, there are two small connector pegs. If I can hold them up. They look like this. They look identical to each other. One of them is black and one is gray. Those are not decorative colors. Those tell you something about how the pegs work. So when it says you need a black peg, grab a black peg until and unless you run out. So I'm going to put a black peg in here, and I'll show you the difference. I'll put the gray one at the other end of this beam that I have. I'll show you the difference between black and gray pegs, for instance. So if I hold this upright, you notice that the beam is not freely rotating. The peg is firmly in the hole. If I try to do the same thing with the gray peg, it just falls. The gray peg is ever so slightly smaller, and it allows the beam to rotate freely. And that's often not what we want when we're building these things. So black pegs are important for a reason. Generally speaking, if it shows a particular color, you should be looking for the part that is exactly that color. All right, so the first step is to build what they call the vertical chassis element. Basically, this is two of these frames that are going to make the vertical part of the robot's body. And each one is slightly different because of the front of the robot's different from the back. So the first step starts with one of these frames. And then we have two red connector pegs that look like this. And two of the long blue connector pegs. There are short blue ones, don't make them mistake, don't get them confused. We also need two of these little black pegs. We're going to use a lot of these. And these are called T-beams for obvious reasons. Okay, so we're going to put these together. One of the keys to keep in mind with this section is all of the pegs are going to go in from the outside. So what we're going to have is on these three holes on each side, we'll have a blue peg, a red peg, and a little black peg. And those will all have good reasons later on. So first I'm going to put the blue pegs in the top, just like this, both from the outside. And then we're going to attach the T-beam to the blue peg. So we're going to attach the T-beam through this little hole right here, the top of the stem of the T. So that the T's are looking a little sideways. Can I get it in there? These are brand new kits. All the parts fit really snugly, which is both good and bad for our purposes. Okay, so this is what it looks like after the first step, and then the next step is just to put the pegs in. These pegs will be used later on to connect to other parts of the robot. But for right now, we're just putting them in place. All right, so we get this little colorful piece as our end product. Now I'm going to set that aside. We're going to build the back, the other end. Actually, I've forgotten which is the front and which is the back. The other end of the vertical chassis has another frame. And this time, we're going to have two of these long blue pegs again, to make sure I can see my instructions here, and two straight beams. Now, this leads me to another side comment about Lego building, for those of you who haven't done it a lot. Lego units are not measured in millimeters or centimeters or inches or any real units. They are measured in Lego units, and in this case, the length of a beam is the number of holes that it has in it. So this is a 7 beam because it has 7 holes in it. Things that don't have holes are also measured in those units. So for instance, here I have a small axle. If you want to know how long this axle is, the easiest thing to do is to lay it alongside a beam and see how many circles long it is. This is a 7 long beam. This axle is a 6 long axle. Okay, so what we're going to do is to stack these two and then put this on top of it, and we need to connect them together. The way that we're going to do that is with these long blue pegs. So you go in one from the end, and you attach the two beams together. We do the same thing at the other end. And then we just set this on top. There we go. That's all there is to that part. So it's a little more simple. All right, so now we're going to build the second part of the vertical chassis component. This is going to be side parts that attach the two frames that we built before to each other. So for this, we're going to do this twice, once for each side of the frame. And for this, we need an L beam that is 3 by 5, and we need a 9 long beam, an 11 long beam, 2 more of the red connector pegs, 1 more of the blue connector pegs, 3 of the little black pegs, and 2 of these little funky guys. These they look a bit like an axle, but they're really short, and we're going to use them for purposes that will become clear later on. Okay, all right, so the first one of these that we're going to build, I'm going to try and build it very carefully. So it is important here which direction you put this blue peg through. And so for this one, I know that I need to put the blue peg through from this side, not from the other. It makes a difference. All right, and then we're going to put a black peg right below it. And then on the other side, we'll put black pegs at both ends of the frame. So we end up with something that looks like this. All right, now the next step is to take the long beam, and we're going to attach it so that its front end aligns right here. So we just attach it with the 2 black pegs. And in the second hole here, from the opposite side, from this side, we're going to put a red peg through, and we'll put one of these little guys into that red connector peg. All right, the last step is to add this framing piece, which is goes a little higher up. This is going to connect through this blue peg in the third hole of the beam. So we first do that, and then we put a red peg in this direction. And that's it. This is one side of the framing pieces for the vertical framing. I guess I have more of these than I need. And now we're going to build one that looks exactly like this, but it's symmetrically opposite. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we have these 2 pieces that are symmetrical. And what we're going to try to do is to connect them all together with the framing pieces we built before. Okay, so the next step is to build the actual frame. We're going to take this framing piece that we built before, we're going to add 2 pegs to it. This was actually in the instructions from before, I just forgot about it. Notice that these pegs are coming in from the outside. That's important, again, that they come through from the outside. Now we're going to connect this piece of the framing with this part right here. What's going to happen is that this red peg is going to slide into the slot right above the blue pegs on this one, so that this white L beam is right up against the framing piece. Just like that. Now we're going to attach the back part of the frame to this. It's important that the foot of the T be pointing toward the other framing piece. The little black vertical, I guess it's the bar across the top of the T, should be facing the other direction. Now what we're going to do here is that the blue peg is going to go into the end hole on this upper beam, and The black peg is going to go into the corresponding hole in the longer beam down below. So I'll turn it this way, and I'm going to line them up a bit. Takes a little bit of wiggling sometimes to get the pieces to go where they want them to go. All right, so this is what it looks like. Pretty cool. Now we're just going to do the same thing on the other side, so I'll turn it around. First, the red peg in the front goes into the hole right above the blue. And then now, since this is in the same spot, I kind of have to do all of these at once, which is always a bit of a trick. There. Now it's all clicked together. This is the completed vertical chassis element. And we're now going to set it aside and go on to do the horizontal chassis element.